Been here for since 1988, so coming up 33 years. We took over 1st of October 1988. I purchased it as a avocado and stone fruit orchard with some oranges. This block and this block of persimmons here, everything on this side, basically to the waterway, used to be avocados. Then I had stone fruit further down, and I persevered with avocados for probably 12-15 years. I probably should have pulled out earlier. Environmentally, we were a little bit marginal. They grew well for a period, but then we had a couple of years where we got a very cold winter and we had frosts. Trees were frosted 8 metres off the ground, and at that one year they were loaded with fruit and got frosted. So we were going to lose. We lost a lot of fruit that year. The other thing with avocados is they are very thirsty trees. You need a lot of water to grow avocados consistently. As time's gone on, our water supply has become less reliable. Reached the point where we weren't making any money out of them. We were losing money. So I then decided to focus on stone fruit, persimmons and fresh figs. And we've been doing that for probably the last 15 years. With or without Mother Nature, we've managed to, we're still here. She throws a few curveballs at us, but we're still here.
So water is your main issue at the moment, or is it still temperature fluctuation?
No, this year we've had a warm winter, very few frosts, certainly no serious damage frosts. We can get frost damage in stone fruit because they flower early, and we can get a severe frost which will take that flower off, or a percentage of that flower off. So we'll see in here, this block and that block of stone fruit there have got overhead sprinklers on, and they are there for frost protection. Yes, my major issue currently, and has been for about 3 years, is my water supply. We rely on an underground aquifer from about 50 feet, which is recharged from Sandy Creek, which was the creek you came across just before my gateway. That creek has not run water for 5, if not 6 years. Our aquifer on this farm is bone dry, so I can't pump any water from it. Back in the early 90s, we're in a similar situation for a short period, and I bought another block basically over on the railway line about 2 kilometres away, and it had for the border that was on it, it had a deep bore out of sandstone, and it has done well for a number of years. It's still pumping water, but the issue I have with it at the moment is that the conductivity of that water, i.e. the level of salt, is a bit high. Figs can handle it, stone fruit can handle it, persimmons don't like it. It has had a significant negative impact on persimmon production in the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, water's an issue. We did have a nice, reasonably wet summer. We could grow plenty of grass and the trees responded well, but the creek did not run through here. The creeks on the other side of the valley did run. Laidley Creek came down, Lockyer came down, Tent Hill came down, briefly. But this one here, I think it came down and got to the highway, or just the other side of the highway, and there's a dam there, and it didn't get past that dam. So anyway, we're still here. The result of that is that many years' experience, our irrigation system is just about as efficient as we can get it. Most of it is trickle, permanent trickle or drip irrigation. I do have some micro sprinklers on some blocks which I haven't converted over, but all of the blocks you can see here and everything nearly everything this side of the waterway is drip irrigation, which it's very effective if you're getting some rain every so often to wet up the area outside that drip zone. But if you get no rain for 6 months, your trees tend to rely very much on that wetted ball area along the rows, and out in the rows there's no moisture there, so the root systems tend to dry off and die off. So
have you dug up a tree that's been into that, like, in that circumstance, and you've seen all the roots matted in one area?
No, I haven't. I can't afford to disturb them. We haven't taken any out. We've lost some trees, but I haven't gone in and ripped them out. But I just can see that there's just nothing, no moisture out there. So the roots may be there, or the large roots may still be there, but there's no active roots in that area. So as we go along, please fire questions, because I don't know what the varying levels of experience and knowledge is. I'm happy to take questions at any stage.
Is drip irrigation like blowing all day, or is it just like in the mornings or afternoons?
It's only no, it'll run for 2 hours, but it'll only get that. It depends on my water supply. Persimmons have not been irrigated since harvest back in April. They did have rain then, and they've had reasonable moisture up until now. But at the moment, haven't got enough water to irrigate them. So I'm sort of looking at them and thinking, "Oh, you're still alive. You're coming out." And historically, they've done that.
Did you change your pruning because of the lack of water?
Yes, we have changed our pruning. We've been much more severe. Not left anywhere near as much fruiting wood on as we would have done in the past. That block 5 years ago, it produced about 45 tonnes per hectare marketable. We picked 45 tonnes per hectare of persimmons, and they were nice sized fruit. You may not believe me, but I can assure you 45 tonnes per hectare on persimmons is a pretty good crop. Yes, some of the apple guys are getting 80, 90, 120 tonnes, but they're growing them on high trellis. I was very happy with 45 tonnes. Last year we probably got 5 tonnes. Yeah.
And so what happened to your customers then? Were they accepting of that, or what do they do?
They have to be. Persimmons over the years, a lot of our business has been on export. And we have not exported for the last 3 years. I've just said that I haven't got enough to make it worthwhile, and we haven't bothered. I don't know what the people in Singapore and Malaysia are eating. They're getting some from other suppliers, but the guys I normally deal with, no.
So do you think that if you had a good year, you would be able to tap back into that market?
Yes.
Or do you think you do?
Yeah, on persimmons, we're probably lucky that there's not going to be a lot of other. No one's going to jump in and take my market, I don't think. And if you want to go back in, there's always the easy way to get to sell it. Go a little bit cheaper. That'll get you back in. But,
and how much cheaper what do you call a little bit? Is it just a few cents, or?
A couple of dollars a box. That'll get you back in. But,
and so what do you normally sell a box for? Just roughly.
10 kilo box, we were about $60 a box out of Singapore and Malaysia. I don't know what they were paying over there, because that I was getting $60 a box, so somebody then had to be, my exporter then had to pay for the freight, etc, etc, etc. But that's not to say we were making much more money there than we would have made if we sent it into Brisbane. I think we always have to be careful that there's a bit of a fallacy that the export market's going to be worth a lot more. That's not necessarily the case. The export market can be useful to shift volume. And there are a few years there where if I'd put all my production onto the domestic market, it would have killed that market, because there were a couple of other big growers at the time who were focusing on the domestic market. So I've always wanted to have a foot in both camps. When you haven't got the product, it's not an issue.
Oh, I just want to know whether if all of these are the same cultivar, the same variety.
Persimmons, they're all the same variety.
Okay.
We have a very limited range of varieties on persimmons.
So what's the decision-making process in terms of choosing the variety? If you're going to change, what will be the reason for changing to a different one?
Probably easier to explain on stone fruit, but it comes down to, in stone fruit we've got probably 6 or 7 varieties, because we want a range of maturities if we can, and the earlier they are the better, and then it becomes quality. We get to a point in stone fruit where the buyers are not buying it because it's not red enough, it's not sweet enough, it's not big enough.
Okay.
So we have no option but cut them out, start again.
Okay.
Find a new one.
Yep, and you're likely to be introduced to these new varieties from like research groups or seedling companies or maybe other companies?
On stone fruit?
Yep.
We have a very limited opportunities to get access new varieties. There are no active breeding programs really in Australia. Most of the material comes from United States or Europe.
Okay. Yeah, so you've heard maybe a variety worked really well over there and you decided to
Well, I'm sourcing new stone fruit varieties from the company that markets my end product.
Oh, I see, yeah.
They're offering a package where if you plant this variety, we will sell it. You can't sell it to anyone else.
Okay, yeah.
And they're paying the cost of importing it through quarantine, etc.
Yeah.
Little old mug farmer me, if I try and bring something in through quarantine, A, it may not work here, and B, it's going to cost me a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
They bring them in, do some evaluation, and then if it works, we'll go with it. So I've actually got a couple of new blocks of a nectarine which was bred in Spain. I'll harvest my first commercial crop this year, and that's a variety that was brought in from Spain by that company, and I have to exclusively sell it through them. Touch wood, it's going to work.
Yeah, it all goes well.
So, whereas persimmons, at the moment there's only probably 2 good commercial varieties around. Everyone can access them.
Are they non-astringent?
Non-astringent, yeah. So there's probably 3 varieties. There is an astringent persimmon around, but it makes up probably less than 5% of the Australian production. It's a very limited market for that. I've only been interested in the non-astringent. Everyone understand what a non-astringent persimmon is? No. Didn't think so. Who knows what a persimmon is? I know it's an orange fruit, let's say about so big. They're non-astringent. You can eat it like an apple. It's crunchy. They may have seeds. The way we grow them, they don't have any seeds because they don't have any pollinators in here. So you just eat them like an apple and crunchy. The astringent persimmon, which has been around for years. They used to be in the backyards of houses all around Queensland and Australia. They're orange too, but if you try and eat them crunchy, they'll dry your mouth out big time. But if you let them go soft, so they end up like an overripe tomato, they're beautiful and sweet. But as I say, there's a very limited market for those. The people who eat it tend to be Southern European. They know them. They know how to handle them.
When did you switch over to the netting, and what are the challenges of producing under netting?
We started netting probably 20 years ago when we had a couple of bad stone fruit seasons where the flying foxes came in and smashed us. We had a year where a tree like that, we wouldn't have harvested any fruit above shoulder height. The flying foxes got the rest. That was despite the fact that we were shooting probably 100, 150 a night. It was not effective shooting. And everyone was looking at how do we control flying foxes, and people tried lights, they tried sirens, they tried strobe lights, everything. And I came to the conclusion the only one option was netting. And we then proceeded to gradually, as we could afford to, cover stone fruit blocks. Made it easy then. Well, when we took the avocados out, well then I was going to put stone fruit and persimmons underneath them. Persimmons, flying foxes don't normally worry them, but lorikeets do. So we could get hit very hard by rainbow and scaly-breasted lorikeets. Even now, lorikeets will find a hole that's about this big. And if they find it, they tell their mates, and they'll pretty well fly straight through. They fold their wings back and go in. This block, I still had lorikeets in here last year. I didn't have the percentage or the amount of damage that I've had in other years. That's why you'll see the gateway there going up to my house. This net tied up to the roof. If there are flying foxes around, I'll drop that net on both sides every night to keep them out. And then when the lorikeets are around, that's dropped all day, trying to keep them out. Challenges of growing under them, under the net, no real serious ones. I find it's probably a softer environment. We don't get the wind and the wind damage that would get outside. You get a little bit more humidity, so therefore potentially leaf diseases are more concerned, but my spray program it handles that. Obviously I'm not trying to be organic. We handle that pretty well. Our water use is probably back a bit. I've never done the figures, but there's certainly some research around that says you can save a reasonable amount of water by having the netting. The other advantage on this netting, hail, to keep flying foxes out, you can put a fairly big net up, big holes. I decided if I'm going to do it, I'm going to get both benefits, and so this is all hail netting, not top class hail netting. Stanthorpe will have a slightly tighter mesh, but also won't have flat net, because this is designed that if we get a hailstorm on it, that panel there, that rectangle, will just fill with hail. And I've seen that touch the ground. I've only had a couple of hailstorms, but in a hailstorm it'll touch the ground. It'll come down on the trees, through the trees. So after, critical thing is you've got to walk away from it. You don't go in and release the hail. You just let it melt. It'll go back up fairly well, but then you've got to go along and stitch up all the holes where the trees got poked in it and that sort of thing. So, but touch wood, we've only had a couple of storms.
So a few different crops. What window is your fruit coming onto the market, and what's that like with the rest of Australia?
Okay, stone fruit. Queensland is the first fruit in the season. So we'll start harvesting stone fruit first week in October. We used to go from early October through to Christmas time. Now there's so much production down south in Swan Hill, Shepparton and so on, in that November-December period. If I could, I'd be out of stone fruit by Melbourne Cup Day. At the moment, the varieties I've got, I'm still going to mid-November. But we need to be in that very early period.
So they're pushing their window out now?
They're trying to get earlier, yes. Everyone's looking for earlier fruit. The problem we have now is that very early stone fruit here, we're probably not going to get into the supermarkets because they're getting fruit from New Zealand, from USA. If you go into Coles and Woolworths at the moment, there's nice big peaches and nectarines in there. And that's all coming in from USA. Has done for about the last 5 years. In the last year we found Woolworths wouldn't switch over and buy our low chill stone fruit. They kept the US stuff going until Swan Hill started, basically.
Are you using door mix on the stone fruit to get the buds out, or are they just coming out?
No, they just come out normally.
Can you use door mix on stone fruit?
I've never have.
Yeah.
I know it's registered, but I'm not inclined to push them any earlier because one frost and I could lose the lot. You know, we've had stone fruit in full flower covered in ice, wet ice, stalagmites, whichever they are, hanging this far off the tree. You don't want to get too early. Persimmons we'll start harvesting in normally 15th of March, thereabouts, and that's again before all the southern guys. There's the odd grower up Gympie, those sort of areas, they'll pick persimmons in February, but I'm comfortable with where they are. And figs, we'll start harvesting figs normally about Christmas. We get busy in beginning of January. And we will then pick figs through normally until we get a big frost in June. So we'll pick for 5+ months. That gives us continuity in the market. We can establish our clientele. A lot of our figs go into restaurants, food service trade, and once they start buying for the season, they'll stick with us. Touch wood.
So to do that, you have to organise that yourself?
No, I still do it through the central markets. We've established we work on a level of quality for the brand, and they're happy with that. So that goes pretty well. They want to know what's coming, when it's going to start, because they've got buyers looking for it. And then once they start, they want to know if there's any problems coming.
So do you think the fig market could be looking for more fruit, or it's...
No, it's oversupplied.
Right.
There is an opportunity there, and there's a number of growers who've dabbled in it over the last 10 years. Very few of them have stuck with it. Because something that I would argue you can't get too big on, or you can get too big on, and you'd lose your quality. And we normally pick 6 days a week. I would like to pick 7, but I have to give the staff 1 day off. So we pick and pack 6 days a week. And that's going through the same trees 6 times. So we're picking them right at the point of being ready to eat. If I look in the marketplace, I can see fruit in there that would have stayed on my tree for another 2-3 days, because somebody else is only picking 3 times a week or twice a week. That makes a big difference. And the buyers quickly realise, hey, we'll be able to use all of that fruit that this guy sold. We'll only use half of the fruit that somebody else has packed for.
And do you pack your figs in the field, or do you take them to the shed like yours?
Take them to the shed.
They get graded there.
And they're all graded by hand.
Yeah.
I haven't got a machine for them. It's all graded by hand to the site into sizes. But they're chilled down very quickly. They're chilled right down before they're sold, before they're dispatched. Because figs are very, very sensitive. And that if you get them cold down to 0 or 1 degree, they'll hold for a week. But if you put them out at 10 degrees, they'll probably last for 24 hours. So we have to get them cold. What do I use for disease control program? A fairly standard round of fungicides and insecticides, depending on what what the problem is and the time of the season. Nearly all of my spraying is done with a large air blast sprayer, which goes up and down every row. The one that's different, how many of you have seen those things? Know what they are? It's a fruit fly attractant. That attracts the male fruit flies. It's a pheromone. The female pheromone is embedded in that wick along with insecticide. It attracts the males. They come in, walk all over that, get a dose of chemical and die. That is part of a systems approach on fruit fly control. And all it does is takes the males out. We'd like to think that if there are no males in the paddock, the females will miss out. They won't be able to lay any eggs, but rest assured they'll always find a male. In the fruit fly species anyway. Combine that with what we call a bait spray. And the theory is, or the science is, that the female, before she lays eggs, needs to have a high level of feed on protein. And the tank on the back of the quad, I mix up a protein feed. And the one I use is one that comes pre-mixed. It's basically molasses, so it's sugar, and it's got an insecticide in there. In the case of that one, it's spinosad. I go through and I simply do a band spray on every second row fairly quickly, and that wets those leaves. The females come along and feed on that bait or that molasses. Then she dies. So we're getting our control. The other thing that helps me is the netting. I find that they don't normally come over or in through the top. Or we've found they don't come in through the top. They come in through the sides. So most of the orchard, as you can see, the sides are all down. And that has proven to be quite effective at keeping that population inside down. You know, I've got some traps, we'll see one down there in a minute, where I monitor the population that's in here, and I've got a couple of traps out in the edge of the bush out here. Yesterday I counted 35 fruit fly, and they're going to be males in that trap. In one, and there was 30 in the other one. And that was in 5 days. But the traps inside here the ones I've checked are down to 1 or 2 in a week. Right, so our population in here is nothing like it is outside. Touch wood, I haven't had to put a cover spray of a insecticide through the orchard for about 4 years. That's not to say we don't get any stung fruit, but the number of stung fruit we're getting is very, very low.
Waste on farm and in the pack house, because many fruit crops farmers are experiencing waste due to different reasons. And I think the Australian market demands more the grade 1 instead of grade 2 or grade 3. So what is your experience in that?
In stone fruit, the varieties we used to grow, we would get probably 30% waste because they would bruise. And that was, I didn't like that. But the only option I had then was I couldn't put them into the marketplace. Those, at that time, I had a local fruit shop which would buy them for not much, but he would sell them, or some of them. But in the last 6 or 8 years, the varieties are more robust. I've switched most of my stone fruit to what they call non-melting flesh. In other words, it's like a canning peach that they use for canning. If you chew into them, they're a little bit chewy, whereas the old types were what we called a melting flesh, and you chew into them and they melt in your mouth. Very susceptible to bruising, very hard to manage. The non-melters, much better, provided they're picked ready to eat, or just close to eat, they are very edible. Dare I say it, if you buy some that came out of Swan Hill at the beginning of the season, they'll be like green bloody rubber balls. They won't even be rubber, they'll be solid. They'll be green. You can put them in the fruit bowl and leave them for a week and you still can't eat them. But managed properly, the non-melters are very good from a losses point of view. Our losses now are probably down to 2%. Okay, so it's not an issue. I can sell them locally with just people coming off the road and buying them. Figs, a bit different. We can get more losses there, but even then we don't. Not a major problem. No, those baits, I spread them. I think theoretically there's about 25 per hectare, so they're spread through. Those were put through the persimmons before last crop, so they've been hanging there since probably January, and I'll remove them come January this year and put fresh ones up there. But they'll last for 6 or 9 months in the field, having an effect.
Problem? Any plant diseases that's a particular problem for you? Or do you have to keep them aware of?
The diseases I have in stone fruit and figs and persimmons are fairly easily or routinely controlled. I will own up to one insect problem in stone fruit. The last couple of years we have had a problem with two-spotted mite after harvest, or maybe even towards the peak of harvest time. So I started using predatory mites, and I'd put them in there immediately after harvest. They worked reasonably well, but they were vulnerable to some of the insecticides. And there's another problem we can have in stone fruit called the San Jose scale. I hate to admit it, but the last 2 years I've sort of forgotten about San Jose scale after harvest. We'll go for a walk down there in a minute and show you on young trees. It's given me a real headache this spring, because I used to put a couple of sprays of chlorpyrifos on post-harvest, mixed up with my fungicide, and that for San Jose, and that worked well. But because it was deadly on predatory mites, I dropped it out of the tank. So this year the scales exploded and given me a headache. So it's all very well to look after the predator or use predators, but it's a whole systems approach, and I failed because I didn't think of all the extra effects that could be there. So I've learnt my lesson. I'm now trying some new chemistry to control them.
Just with your figs over there, I noticed you got some bags or something over top of them.
Yep.
For sunburn or what's that?
That's for frost. Yep. Yeah. Figs, when they're young like this, can be vulnerable to frost. I knew I had a stockpile of bags that I'd used in one of my old blocks several years ago. So I thought, no, I'll put them on this block. When I pulled the heap out, the rats and mice had been in there, and there weren't as many usable bags there as I would have hoped. But we put out everything we could. That's as far as we got.
So they're just kind of like blankets trying to keep the heat down, or?
Sorry?
How are they working? Are they like blankets trying to keep the heat down?
Oh, they're just insulating the branch, because a frost, you'll often get effect on particularly these flat ones, where what actually gets burnt is what gets hit with the sun first. It thaws it extra quickly. I wasn't saving the whole length of the chute. I was just saving the main frame of the chute, or looking to. Because we didn't get any serious frosts, it was a waste of time. But I wasn't going to come out here at 4 o'clock in the morning and try and cover them all up. So that's, yeah.
And were they figs we passed just on the way over there?
Yeah.
What's the difference between growing them on a trellis or growing them without a trellis? How do you go about your pruning there?
We'll go for a walk round, and I've got a lot more figs around the corner which are not on trellis. This is a new block, a bit of an experiment. I'm confident I can do it, but that was a block of stone fruit 2 years ago. I had the trellis there for the stone fruit. I had some disease problems in the stump of the stone fruit. I didn't want to go back in with stone fruit. I decided, no, I'll go in with figs. We will grow those. It's really what they call a cordon system, where I want that frame on the bottom wire will be permanent, and then my crop will come directly off that. And if I need to, I can clip it to the wires as it goes up.
The vertical ones every season?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, come winter time next year, we'll cut it back to that again, and we can regrow it. Younger block of stone fruit here, which we can have a look at. They find the right ones, tops of the trees, and just gnaw on them. I'd never seen it before. Lastly, I realised it was mice. What I'm doing now is putting bait, most of the time, in a piece of PVC like that. Wallabies like that bait as well. It doesn't do their health a lot of good. We killed some of the wallaby population here, and at times I've had 40 plus wallabies living in the orchard in the peak of a drought. It's the only green pick and green grass that I have anywhere in the district. They'd all come here and live off my green grass. We didn't pick a nectarine below about that height because the wallabies had picked them all. I've got net to the ground. They put their head under it, lifted it up and went through. What they do, go for the grass? No, they went straight to a nectarine tree. There's only probably 15 or 20 wallabies around now, so they're not doing quite the damage that they did last year. These are obviously young trees, and this is the training system that I use. 4.5 metres by 2.5 metres. Stone fruit into a central leader and 2 side branches. Try and get a branch down on the bottom wire as well to fill in that gap. Harvest fruit from down here through to harvesting, pruning or picking. We're using step ladders, 3-step ladders, and that gives all my workers, should give all my workers access to the tops of the trees. If I got a particularly short one, well, sometimes they've got to get their mate to help them. But and that's our system. The older trees here are still that same 3 with a low one. All of that pruning is done by hand, either with pneumatic secateurs or just a handheld ones. These young trees, we did them all without the compressor, whereas these old ones, we used the compressor and had pneumatics because there was some bigger wood in there that we needed to take out.
How long does pruning take you to get all this done?
We started pruning second week of May, and we finished pruning persimmons first or second week of August. I had 3 men basically permanently pruning for that period of time.
So in terms of your workers, you've got the 3 that were doing the pruning. So they work year round?
They work year round.
And the others just come in at thinning or harvesting?
We do normally, through the fig season, I normally have an extra couple. So I've got 5 or 6 to pick and pack figs on a daily basis. At the moment we're thinning nectarine, stone fruit, 14 there today, fast, and they're good workers. Shortage of backpackers around, it's a whole different ballgame. When we're thinning, I'm working in teams of 2. My intention is that I can keep them employed through until probably mid-December. Thinning, we'll do some pre-harvest pruning to take some of the extra growth off the trees. Then we'll have harvesting. Tucked in there somewhere there'll also be some pruning, quite a bit of pruning to be done on figs. Thinning of persimmons in early December. It'll be a 95% fruit set on flowers. So that branch has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fruit. And I want a maximum of 2. So everything else has to come off. So we have to we thin off straight on the ground. Trust, I think if they do some of their thinning, they have to mulch it up because fruit fly this will shrivel to nothing before the fruit fly would get a chance. Because if we don't thin them, I haven't got much of a market for fruit that doesn't get much bigger than that. So it is a critical phase of the season is to get that fruit off and get it before it gets to what they call stone hardening. At that point in time, it's too late to thin. That fruit isn't going to get any bigger than where it's already at. But others, one like that, take his mates off and he will size up very significantly. That's the aim of it.
So by thinning, you're also making sure that they're more uniform in terms of coming to harvest?
To a degree, yes. You tend to leave the biggest and the best. So the very late flowers, we get rid of them, yes. Their whole life, they've been cut back to that height. In winter time, you can see the fresh cuts here. Workers are told, I want 15 branches on the tree. And then a number of times through the season, we'll come back and take new ones off. Figs have a great propensity to keep sending out shoots.
So ones like this under here, do you rub them off or do you just break them off?
We'll just, a little one,
Yeah.
that'll come, get broken off. And then there'll be one like this. There's one going straight up and there's one on the side. So we take the side one off. Because he's wanting to go down, and it'll always tend to be a lazy branch. It'll end up being too low. Go through this year because some of the trees had branches or parts of the tree that had died out. So we went through with a chainsaw and trimmed them up. This year, if we get the opportunity, we'll regrow something in that space. I'm looking to get 15 fairly evenly spaced, fairly uniformly from about there up. And once they start growing, they'll grow. This would have been probably 2.5, 3 metres long. So I find they're too crowded. If I leave 8, they'll grow very well, but my productivity won't be as good as it should be. I've been here for about 20 years. Because every time they put out a leaf, they put out a fruit. And people say, oh, figs only go for a month. No, they don't. It depends how they're managed. Yard trees, people don't prune them. They only put on this much growth in a year. That'd be half a dozen leaves. So all they get off each branch would be 6 fruit. 15 branches. Once we start harvesting, most branches will probably have 15 to 20 pieces of fruit along that branch. And as fast as we harvest them, they'll put another one on the top. We have to stop when we've had a big frost, because the frost will take all that leaf off, won't fill the fruit. So that's the end of our season. And we can still have 10 or a dozen fruit, developing fruit, on the ends of those branches. They don't get a chance to come to it. So we just take them all off again.